You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. Hey everyone, welcome to the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we unwind, relax, and delve into all things hammock related. Join us as we swing into the world of hammocks, exploring tips and tricks for setting up that perfect hang, sharing stories of outdoor adventures, and discovering the latest trends in hammock camping and relaxation. Whether you're a seasoned hammocker or new to the art of hanging, this podcast is your cozy corner to kick back, escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and soak in the soothing atmosphere of the hammock culture. Prepare to be inspired, educated, and entertained as we embrace the hammock lifestyle together. So grab your favorite hammock, find that perfect spot to hang, and let's embark on a hammock-filled journey that will leave you feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to take on the world. This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where every episode is a breath of fresh air. Let's get started.
Howdy Hangers, welcome to this week's episode of the Hammock Hangers Podcast. This month has felt like an entire year. It's
So we've
January
gone from a year to a week to a year to back to a month. You don't even know where you're at, or
whatever time period we're in. As a teacher, the month of January lasts like 18 months. So it's been a wild ride. I don't know about you, Paul, with like your job and everything, but essentially right after HangCon, the plague just wiped out my class. Like flu A, flu B, some stomach bug. It just was like a plague.
Yeah, Liam's been running through the house all snotty and stuff. I tell him to stay in his room.
Paul, I've been dodging bullets or germs like Neo from the Matrix. Knock on wood, I have not gotten sick yet. When my students come into class, I give them a Lysol wipe. I was like, sanitize your life. Do not get close to me. Stay away. I can teach you from over here.
Have them stick their head in a big bag and spray some Lysol in there and tell them to breathe deep.
Like, don't talk to me. Luckily, I have the relationship with my students that I can kind of say that. So,
goodness gracious. The podcast is going to get shut down.
But this week we are doing a kind of a newbie episode. So we get a lot of people that have just come from HangCon or are seeing all the videos about HangCon and are saying, hey, maybe hammock camping is the thing that I might want to get into, but can feel very overwhelming at first glance. There's a lot of pieces and parts, what type of gear do I need to get? Like what kind of experience? So this week we're really going to dive into taking someone that is completely new and saying, hey, this is what you need to know in order to be successful and just have a positive experience. One of the great ways to get into hammock camping, and I kind of want to go over this, is to go to a hang. And we'll revisit this a little bit later, but we have some really great hangs coming up in different parts of the country. Just here in February 21st through the 23rd, we have two hangs that are coming up. We have the Chili Butt Hang that's coming in, and we also have the that is in Potomac, Maryland. And we also have the Hoosier Winter Hang that's going to be at Morgan Monroe State Forest, and that is just outside of Martinsville, Indiana. So if you are in those areas and you're looking for a hang to head to, you can head over to Hammock Forums. I think both of those have threads on Hammock Forums, as well as I know the Potomac one, the Chili Butt Hang, has a Facebook page as well. Riding into March, we have three hangs that I know of. The PSH friends that we have are doing a spring swing on March 21st through the 23rd. and that's at Poinsett State Park. We have the Spring Yates Hang that's in North Carolina happening on March 6th through 9th. And our friends down in Louisiana, their Spring Swing at Indian Creek State Park is March 14th through the 16th. In April, man, there's a one weekend in April that I guess everybody decided to put up a hang because the weekend of April 25th through the 27th, so we have two really big hangs, actually three really big hangs that are happening. Our friends at Palmetto State, they're doing their no-name hang at Gibbons Ferry State Park, as well as our friends from Dutchware. They are running their Spring Maha at Caledonia State Park that same weekend, and we're doing a little hang too, Paul. So we are going to be, but we're not going to be here in the States. We are going to be across the pond in Denmark at HangCon Europe, which is in coordination with the Danish Outdoor Festival. That will be that same weekend as well, March 25th through the 27th. So lots of great options of getting out there and meeting folks and going to a hang, which is my favorite thing to do. I know we're really excited about HangCon Europe coming up, and we're going to be talking more about that in the next few episodes, kind of especially because there's a lot of interest coming out of that from HangCon, and a lot of people are looking at, hey, can I make HangCon Europe happen? And they're asking questions, and so we might be doing a episode talking about, hey, what can you expect? What is it like to travel internationally with hammocks and just camping gear in general? This might be some people's first foray into flying with hammock gear. And also going to a completely different country can be very, very intimidating at first glance. But, I think I could speak for all of us in saying it was just a tremendous experience last year. And I would have no qualms at all encouraging people to go.
Yeah, no, me either. And I mean, a lot of firsts for me last year, if you remember, AJ. So definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely be putting out a video for that. We'll try and get Christian and Lars on as well, so that way they can talk about what, kind of like do an episode similar to what we do for HangCon here, what to expect and everything. Because
we've been wanting to have them on our podcast for a good while now, so it'll be good.
6 hour time difference, so kind of interferes with that a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, because that over there is a little bit different than just like our HangCon that we have here, because over there HangCon is a part of the outdoor festival, the Danish Outdoor Festival, which in its own is
a tremendous experience.
Yes.
And if I recall correctly, the Danish Outdoor Festival will also be partnering with the Banff Film Festival as well. That's going to be going over there at the same time. So we're looking at tens of thousands of people visiting the site throughout the weekend, watching some films, checking out outdoor gear, and kind of hanging out with us too. So it's going to be a wild ride, and I am all for it. I am so excited. I've already started packing, staging out gear and, debating on what I'm taking, and just, being able to talk to more people. We're definitely bringing over some more of our American vendors, some more of our friends, Chad with UGQ, Yobo Gear, not to mention just, Corey and Weston from Mr. Mox, all kind of making that trip again. And
Derek's going this year. Danny's from Superior. Derek Hansen
as well again. So yeah, it's a traveling family reunion all over again.
Yeah.
So.
And the location this year.
Oh man, it's so exciting.
I mean, last year was great, but I think this year is just going to be topped. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Shug and us and Corey, a lot of the conversations that we had last year is nothing will top your first year. And I mean, the first year is definitely an experience that I will remember forever, not to mention the relationships that we fostered while we were over there. But man, there's so much more on the plate. And the cool thing is, like, this second time around, even though it's like the venue is new and the festival, just like HangCon, we know will be a new experience. We have so much more schema about what is going on. Like, we know kind of a general idea of what to expect, especially like with travel, plans before and plans after the festival. But yeah, but this episode is not about HangCon Europe. You'll have to tune in and subscribe to get those episodes later on. But today we're going to be talking about hammock camping for beginners. And it seems like it's been a long time since I was a beginning hammock camper, but I totally remember those times. And, when I got into hammock camping, as well as yourself, hammock camping was still very new. There was still so much in development and so much technology in development. And, quilts were just kind of like coming out and like really getting going. But gosh, the sky's the limit as far as things are then compared to now.
Well, just to put it into perspective of when I got into it, which I don't know if that was around the same time as you or not, but Dutch wear gear was not Dutch wear gear. It was just Dutch online selling his titanium like buckles and all that stuff. He didn't have the whole store.
Yeah, I mean, you did your through hike in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't even get into hammock camping till 2015. And
okay.
So, gosh, man.
Yeah.
We've seen a slew of vendors, a slew of products that have come and gone in that time. So the landscape is still very much changing. There's definitely not, at that point, there wasn't a kind of a go-to vendor or a brand that I would say, okay, well, this brand is going to be around forever. So
there was only a few, and I mean, some of the stuff that you bought, you would go to hammock forums and go through the forums, the sale forums, and find the stuff.
There was a lot of DIY, of DIY stuff going on, and I remember, kind of in the early days, a lot of the cottage vendors that are still around today, they were offering just really customizable down to the thread color that they would have sewing and stuff like that. And I can only imagine the rigmarole and the headache that it would be to continue that. Now, a lot of our vendors have abandoned that, and hey, props on them. They can offer a better product at a faster turnover rate. But man, the landscape of just hammock gear has changed so much. But so why hammock camping? So we talked on the podcast of kind of like our hammock origin story, and so just a quick thing, Paul. So why did you choose hammock camping over just continuing with tents?
Well, I mean, when I think I went over this, on the episode where you actually interviewed me and talked about my hiking trip, but I had actually just gone online and was researching one-man bivvies to get to go on my through hike, and ended up coming across hammocks. And I mean, even just doing the research that I did then, I knew that it had to be more comfortable than being on the ground, and so I dove into it head first and just, went full swing into it. And that's when I got my first hammock, which was the Clark, and fell in love with it. And I have not gone back since. I mean, just the comfort that I get from it. There's no way that sleeping in a tent on the ground, I would have the comfort that I get from that I get whenever I sleep in my hammock.
Do you think maybe the kind of that marriage that you had with hammock camping came with that, hey, this is providing the enrichment of your AT through hike, which is an incredible endeavor in itself, but just the hammock camping maybe allowing you to complete that?
Probably. I mean, I would have to say, because I mean, I don't know that I would have finished. I mean, I can't say either way, of course, whether I would or wouldn't have, but I don't think it would have. I know I wouldn't have been as comfortable. And so I'm sure that would have played a big part into it. You know, if I'm not comfortable out there, why am I going to spend 6 months doing it?
Yeah. And also,
you know what I'm saying?
In hiking all day, if you're not getting good sleep, well, I know, and I love you to death, but I know how you get when you don't get sleep. You would be a
Snickers bar
person.
I can't. I know I can be.
And I would be too.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. I think I could do, if I was forced to, I could do maybe like a weekend in a tent, but to like backpack and stuff, that's a hard.
If I was forced to, yeah, maybe a weekend, I would not like it. Yeah. And the people around me probably wouldn't like it either, but there is that. See,
so I came at hammocks from a completely different perspective. I had no interest in, through hiking. I had no interest in backpacking really at all. For me, hammocks came as a kind of a self-care that being in that corporate boardroom and making the statement, "What idiot spends $300 on a hammock?" Kind of opened the floodgates for me. And I still vividly remember that Eno double nest that I got, and it providing, that was a marriage for me. Like hammocks initially entering into my life that provided a great way for me to process my dad's passing and processing like what my life looked like. And at that particular time, and just offering so much that I felt so excited about sharing this wonderful thing that I had discovered, and the benefits that it was kind of like those people that talk about like, hey, if you're vegan, you don't have to tell anybody because they already know, because you probably have told them 8 or 9 times in the last 5 seconds.
Right.
I get that with like people that are carnivore now. Like I know like so many friends are on carnivore. Hey, good for them. And that's done wonders for them. And they get really, really excited about sharing that. I remember that being kind of my thing for hammocks. And well, here we are now, and we have a podcast about hammocks. So
right. It must have done something. Right. How many years and we're still excited about it? So, I mean, you got to meet the idiot that would spend $300 on a hammock.
Hindsight. Oh, hindsight.
But yeah. And then, the excitement, to me, the excitement is always really going to be there because of the options that we have as well, to change things up. I mean, how many chameleons do you have? Right.
That's
why?
More than two.
Right. Why?
Yeah. One that I use that I can. Yeah.
Right. But no, seriously, how many, why do you have more than one? Because of color options.
Financial choices.
Besides that, and Don wasn't around to stop you. Yes, I know.
I mean, I like the color combinations. I like just the different fabrics. I like just
So there's so many different options that you can have. I mean, it's like, as of now, I have, the two Majestics so far. And I say so far because I know that later on I'm going to be getting another one, because right now I have one color, combo and a 10.5, and I have another color combo and an 11 foot. Well, now I'm going to have to get a different combo in another 10.5, and then, it's just never ending.
Yeah. So a lot of the conversation, evolving the like, hey, what advantages it has over tent camping? Well, I know we've talked about that quite a bit. It's not, hammock camping isn't just a reference compared to how different backpackers go, but I would like to kind of talk about kind of the difference in camping versus other types. Like I would say there's a big advantage over like just in the car camping space. I know my brother-in-law just bought a rooftop tent that he has. I know Chad from UGQ loves his. I know Dutch, he has one as well.
Yeah.
But for me, I think the conversation that I was having with my brother-in-law was like, yeah, you could get this rooftop tent, but then you've got to like outfit your truck for like have some hardware like installed on it permanently or maybe semi-permanently. And it just seems like a rigmarole when I could say, hey, I'm going to buy a hammock stand and set that up. And, I don't have to modify my vehicle. We talk about our family's summer vacations and things. And
Right.
for the most part, I sleep in a hammock for 90% of the trips. The only time that I venture that I say, hey, I'm not setting up is if it's just a quick overnight thing and
Right.
there's no trees. I would have set up a stand. It may be super hot, like in Amarillo, Texas, super windy, and it would just be miserable. And if I am driving for 8 hours the next day, I also need sleep, just like a thru hiker would need sleep for hiking, 12, 14 hours in the day. And so I'll go into the camper, like there's AC in there and I don't have to worry about the wind or,
Right.
but I think hammocks offer, especially with the stand, there's so many benefits that are covered within a hammock that even a camper or a tent or a motorhome don't provide, with the exception of a level of closed-in privacy. I would just say, for the most part, unless you're sleeping in like a hot tent or something like that, there's still going to be that level of vulnerability to the elements. Although I will say, as far as like rain and things like that, I have never gotten wet or soaked to the level that I have in a tent.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I've gotten wet because of my stupidity and not, setting on my tarp right, just from being in a hurry. But I've never been flooded out in a hammock.
So we've talked about the comfort. Now, compared to like just a tent, because that tends to be the tent versus hammock argument that we make a lot. Sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes a hammock setup can be lighter, and it also can be less complicated, and it can pack smaller sometimes than a tent setup, depending on if you're comparing apples to apples, not, apples to Cadillacs.
Right.
And just the versatility. My experience as far as tents is pretty minute, especially when it comes to like a backpacking situation. But just you're wondering about, hey, is there going to be trees? Am I going to have far enough apart, or this, that, and the other? When I'm car camping, I always bring a stand, so that's not an issue. But with a tent, like, you're looking at uneven ground, you're looking at wet ground, you're looking at rocky ground, you're looking at mud, you're looking at animals having direct access to your tent floor. Or, I mean, I'm sure if a raccoon wants to crawl into your hammock, it's going to do its thing. But yeah, I think for me, there's no clear reason why I would choose to say, hey, I'm going to go to the ground, or I'm going to go into a rooftop tent or a camper, unless those very specific things. I would say 90% of the time that I'm going to be in a hammock for those reasons.
Yeah, same here.
So a lot of common misconceptions that we get from new people are like, will I be cold? And if you're not setting things up, yeah, 100%. If I have a person coming to me about, hey, I'm worried about, being cold. I still think about those people in Denmark that were set up next to good. And I just know they were miserable. There's no way that they just weren't completely miserable because they weren't prepared.
Well, they had no clue.
They had no
And,
clue.
I know there's a lot of people out there that are like that, they see everybody else doing it and be like, hey, okay, so all I need is a hammock? Cool. Well, there's a little more than that.
Yeah. And
So,
I mean, I even get to the point where if we're talking about insulation, if I have somebody that is new to hammock camping, especially if they don't have like an extreme budget that a lot of us at least have had throughout the years, I even get very weary about saying, hey, use a pad in a hammock.
yeah, no, I don't know that I would ever tell anybody to use a pad in the hammock. I'd come up
Yeah.
with something different
Like if
because a
you
pad
have,
is just uncomfortable,
yes,
and it's I've never I've never been able to get one to work to where I was comfortable and where it did not flip out from up under me or whatever. To
the
me,
only time
it's
that I've been able to get a pad to work successfully and not fight with it would be in the Haven or a double layer bridge, which
yeah, I can
doesn't
see
have
that.
anywhere for it to go.
It don't have anywhere for it to go. I mean, in the double layer bridge, it's in between the fabric, so it's not going to flip.
Right.
It's
But I
not
would
going to
definitely
flip around or
not
anything. But
suggest a bridge hammock for a brand new hangar.
yeah, no, and I definitely wouldn't recommend a pad for a gathered in hammock either.
Yeah. So that leads us to say like underquilts. Like you just as a general newbie suggestion, you need an underquilt.
Yes,
And I
definitely.
would say an underquilt, whether it's synthetic or whether it's down. For that, I don't really have any qualms. I personally prefer down, just as a,
I like the down
especially
because of the
with
compactability
the
of it and everything.
compactability.
Yeah,
I know people kind of always like, oh, well, what if it gets wet or whatever? There's been so many advances in down technology, which sounds odd to say, since we've started until now that
right,
there a lot of down is a lot of water resistant. Now, not to the point where you can throw it out in the rain for 8 hours and it'll be fine, but just some splash up or stuff like that. It's not near as fragile or near
no,
as like water penetrable as it used to be.
right. The fabric will hold more than the down will.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as that goes, kind of the only benefits of synthetic, for me at least, especially for a new hanger, is cost. I
Yeah,
mean, it's going to be less expensive than down, and a lot of people like they need that affordability as an
right.
entryway into the hobby. So something like at Danny from Superior, he has the Voyager hammock, which is $200, but it comes with a hammock with an attached underquilt that is the synthetic.
Right.
It's a great price. You have companies like One Wind that is offering the top quilts with the synthetic insulation. You have other vendors like Paul Gibson from Arrowhead Equipment that
Mm-hmm.
also does the synthetic top quilts. And if you have the budget to go higher, you've got Adam from Hammock Gear. You have Chad with UGQ. You've got Dutch and
JRB.
Logo Libra.
Yeah.
JRB is another really great company. So there's so many more options as far as down goes.
Right.
But synthetics are a really great entry level quilts that can offer really a lot
Well,
of comfort.
as much of the you know higher brand, our cottage vendors and stuff, of course that's what we go with now because we're more experienced and stuff like that. I don't know that I would ever, if somebody came up to me and was asking me, hey, what's it like to hammock, to hammock camp, I'm thinking about getting into it, what should I go buy? Well, I'm not gonna, tell somebody to run out and spend, a couple of $1,000s on something to try.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think that would be a big turnoff for a lot of people, especially.
it's like there's got to be the entry level companies out there that people use to at least try it. And then once they try it and they find out if it is something that they like and they want to stick with it, then come back and let's talk, because now I'm going to, point you in a couple of different directions for some stuff that it's going to cost you, but you're going to buy it once. And as long as you take care of it and you're not, rough with it and dragging it across rocks and roots and everything else, it's going to last you, and the quality and everything else is going to be there.
Yeah. Talking to people at hangs that we've been to, there's so many people that are into hammock camping because of, let's say, they bought a 9-foot Eno.
Right.
And I mean, that's just been the entryway. And there's so many more options now that offer longer hammocks that are more comfortable.
Right.
There are quilt options that are, comfortable.
Right.
Especially if you're not doing something like a 0 degree or, those -40, like you can get away with, some of those, cheaper synthetic quilts and things like that. If you were camping in an area where if your gear wasn't up to par, serious injury or death may be an option, that's a different conversation. Sure. Now, would I say, hey, go to these frozen butt hangs in Minnesota where it gets down into the negative -20 or something like that.
Right.
When you're popping out in, something, synthetic that you got off Amazon, I was like, you were making a poor life choice.
Correct.
However,
correct.
Camping in Florida for most of the time.
Right.
I mean, any old 50-degree quilts will be completely fine.
Right.
And I think a lot of things, you need that underquilt. You also need a top quilt. Like, so many people say like, oh, well, I've got a 0 degree sleeping bag, I should be completely warm. Yeah, the top of your body will be warm. But if you've got nothing under there, you will freeze.
Well, what about if it's a sleeping bag, AJ, you got the insulation up under you, right?
Oh, I know, right? That's, however, that small rub about, hey, if kind of the same principle, the reason that down doesn't work when it gets wet is because it doesn't loft. It's not puffy. And that puffy is what insulates. The air is actually what insulates you. Kind of like the reason that's why your Yeti cup will hold, the double layer will hold in the heat, unlike a single walled cup. The heat gets released and your coffee gets cold really, really quick. With the Yeti, it stays warm for, hours. Same thing with a quilt. If you are laying on that insulation, then you are creating a single walled coffee cup and your coffee is going to get cold, and that coffee be in your rear end and you're going to be miserable.
Yep. But
and like I said,
you're still carrying that weight too. Whenever if you're camping, you're carrying that weight that is doing you no good. That's where a quilt comes in over a sleeping bag.
Right. And so basically a quilt is a sleeping bag, but just the top half. You still have a foot box in most cases, but you're not carrying, not only are you not carrying the fabric that you're going to be laying on, whether it be in the hammock or in the tent, you don't have that fabric, but you also don't have a zipper to possibly snag on your fabric. And zippers inside hammocks when you're laying on them, any pieces of metal, are just a recipe for disaster.
Yes, gravity does still work.
Gravity still works. You might want to test it, but I guarantee it's still going to work. Another misconception that we see a lot from new people is like, hey, man, like, is this going to be bad on my back? Like, I've got a bad back. I don't know if hammock camping is really the thing. Paul, your back is all beat to crap. So tell us about your miserable experience in hammocks and your back.
Yeah. So just actually not long ago had the MRI done on my back whenever I jacked it up at work, and I actually have 4 bulge discs in my lower back. I still, in my bed, do not sleep, toss, turn, hurt. Sleep in my hammock, like at HangCon, slept all night without a care in the world. No pressure points.
There's no pressure points, guys. Like the hammock will actually make your back feel better, more so than multi-thousand-dollar mattresses.
Yeah, I can contest to that because that's what I have in my bedroom is the Tempur-Pedic bull crap that they lie. They're all lies on their commercials. They really are. If I could set up nothing but hammocks in the bedroom, I would. Deanna won't let me though.
Yeah, with a proper setup, the comfort in a hammock, especially for someone that does have some back pain,
Yes.
will be significantly better. I also hear like people talk about like the shoulder pain and things.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a little tweaky as far as like what type of hammock that you can use. But again, if you're using the right hammock, that those shoulder squeeze won't happen.
Right.
And also, it's letting your body flow into a natural position. If you've got the right setup and you are doing a diagonal lay, if you're in a gathered end, or if you're in a bridge or something like a haven, you just kind of lay in it the same way as you would in a bed. So,
and it conforms around your body. That's why there's no pressure points. Yeah. You know, where when you lay in a mattress, the mattress is only going to compress so far until it turns basically into a board. Whereas the hammock is just a piece of material that conforms around every contour of your body. And that's what's eliminating those pressure points.
Now, Paul, is hammock camping complicated?
Complicating, I wouldn't say it's complicating. I would say that if you know nothing about it and you're trying to do research on it, it can be overwhelming. And I say that because of the amount of options that there are out there. The amount of, look at just how many different ways there are just to hang your hammock.
Yeah.
With the suspension stuff. But complicated, no. If you try out a couple of things and pick one thing and stick with it, no, same thing every time.
Yeah, I think if you are a person that likes to tinker with things, man, hammock camping is your golden opportunity to satiate that hyperfixation.
Yes.
However, like talking with Shug, like he has his setup that he likes. He has found like his dialed in setup, and for him, it's just a grab and go. Like he's going to do the same thing over and over and over. He's going to have that consistent experience over and over and over. And so you can make it as complicated or as simple as you really want. I'm a tinker. Yes. Like I take something different. I take a different tarp, a different suspension, different hammock combinations pretty much every time I go somewhere. There's not one setup that I usually take a lot, with the exception of our summer trips. I usually have like one thing that I kind of go to. And there's some benefits to having that one thing that it is like, it's just super simple. You just strap up and you just know what you're going to expect.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, it's muscle memory. It's just boom, 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 you're done. But again, I also like to tinker too. So I have that option to choose a set that I can kind of tinker with, but I can say, hey, I'm going to be married to this setup, and I'm also perfectly fine with that as well. Right. So the complicated part of that can seem very overwhelming at first, but once you get dialed in, man, it really is super simple.
It's no more difficult than setting up a tent. I've tried to set up some tents that I think you need a PhD to do.
Yeah. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with setting up tents other than, kind of the big Coleman family tents, and they're rough. They're rough. They're rough.
Insert pole A into slot C, wrap it around, strap B.
Right.
Yeah, no. Oh no, I'll go with my hand.
I mean, I guess the same thing could be said. Like once you have, like if you were through hiking, like you would have, especially if you were using something like a Durston or something, even like some of our tents from our friends from Lightheart Gear, like a tarp pole tent. Like, yeah, that's kind of boom, boom, set up and done. But again, you're playing with those variables. You're playing with the, will I have flat ground? Will I have uneven ground? Will my stakes
Rocks,
go into the
roots.
ground? Am I
Right.
in a game trail? A lot of different factors for that. I mean, you still deal with that
Well,
with hammock camping too, but
some, yeah, but I mean, perfect example. Whenever I was doing my hike, there was one time in particular that I remember because it was funny. There was a bunch of us that had gotten into the shelter area around the same time, and several of the people jumped into the shelter, filled it up, and so everybody else was scrambling to try and find somewhere to set up. And I saw two trees that were about the right distance apart. Now there was a big rock up under it. I didn't care. I raised the hammock up a little bit higher, set up over that rock, started cooking my food while everybody else is still trying to find flat ground. There was no flat ground in the area. Everybody woke up the next day miserable because they were, sliding down, one direction or the other. They had a root up under them or a rock or something. So, and that's why, God, Clark Hammocks, they got to know my trail name very well from people calling and ordering hammocks and having Clark send them to a certain area up the trail because they would switch from their tents.
So speaking of Clark's, they're kind of a different type of hammock, and there are some different camping hammocks that are popular, but they're not all the same. So let's talk about some of the different types of hammocks. And I guess for me, there tends to be like three main styles of hammocks that I'll kind of go in. Your traditional gathered in, that's what your dream hammock sparrow. That is going to be your Dutch chameleon. That's going to be your superior gears. That's going to be your majestic. A lot of those that have the gathered in that are essentially, there's some fiddle factor here and there, a rectangular piece of fabric gathered at both ends, and it creates your traditional hammock. You also have bridge hammocks like your Dutch wear banyan, like your war bonnet ridge runner, kind of sort of for the most part your Haven hammock tent as well, your Lawson as well. Those are going to be hammocks that have a structural bar in them that are kind of like built like a suspension bridge. That's why they're called bridge hammocks. And then
Right.
you
Makes
have
it more like a cot.
Yeah, makes it more like a cot. You don't have to have a diagonal lay. In fact, you lay just straight down the middle in those. And then you've got kind of your outliers. You have your 90-degree hammocks, which your hammocks that are going to connect to the trees, but your lay is actually perpendicular to the structural ridge line that runs through, kind of like your hammocks. I think there used to be another. There may be another 90-degree hammock company out there. I'm just not familiar with them. I am friends with the Hammock guys, and so they make a great product over there. So again, your three main difference. Most people, if I am saying somebody that is completely new, I will directly direct them to gathered ends. I think it's the easiest access into gaining entry into the hammock community.
Right.
What are your thoughts, Paul?
I feel the same. You know, I think there's more gathered in users out there than there are the bridge or the 90-degree. So, I think finding out information and learning on one of them, is a little easier to do. Your other ones, your 90 degrees and your bridge hammocks, I would say that there's a little more of a learning curve to them.
Yeah, I would say there would be more for like veterans.
yeah.
The fiddle factor is a little higher.
Right. Just to figure it out so that, you're not putting unnecessary strain on like the bars. When you set it up, setting it up to where you're not gonna, flip out of it or something like that. But no, I mean, I've got the Ridge Runner, which I like the Ridge Runner. I haven't used it in a while. I actually got to have the netting fixed on it, but no, great hammock. But I don't know that I would have liked to start out in a bridge. I'm glad I
Yeah.
started out in the one that I did.
So as far as like a newbie person, I would say, hey, look at a gathered in hammock. And so when you're looking at a gathered in hammock, I would just take in two specific questions that you have to answer. And really, the first one is easy. How long? What's the right size that you need? Personally, I wouldn't say any. If you are over 5'8", I wouldn't say anything shorter than a 10.5 foot hammock.
Depends on the
Um,
brand.
that is true. There are some, as a general rule, I would not say anything shorter than a 10.5 foot hammock for
Right.
camping purposes. Um, in fact, probably my general rule, I'm 6 foot even. If I was having somebody of my size, with the exception of a majestic hammock, I
Right.
would definitely say nothing shorter than 11 foot, which I think
Right.
a lot of brands are kind of going that way. Actually, I take that back. My 10 foot Superior gear is also super comfortable. So I would say, mostly as a general term, nothing shorter than 10.5. Are there some outliers? Yes, but as a general rule for a newbie, I would just say 10.5, 11 foot hammock is the shortest that you want to go for a
Right.
comfortable camping hammock. And the other factor is, hey, how big of a weight factor are you adding to the hammock? Do you, like, for me, when I started hammock camping, I was north of 400 pounds. So what does that look like? I mean, is that even something on the market? Short answer is absolutely, 100%. I've seen hammocks easily built to hold over 500 pounds to hold one person. So you can add multiple layers to get that increased weight ratio that you need. But then again, in your case, when you were through hiking, you're looking for the lightest possible thing that you can have. And yeah, you can go down that rabbit hole as far as the lightweight fabrics and things of that nature. But again, there's a trade-off with, if you're going lighter weight, your fabrics are going to be maybe overall less durable. You've got to be a little bit more with like child hands when you're messing
Right.
with things. Also, a lot of those lighter weight fabrics tend to have a lot more stretch. Now, again, that might be something that you like. That might be something that you don't like. So, but I would just say, as a general rule for me, if I'm suggesting something to a new person, a lot of, especially if I'm going with a cottage vendor, just as in my head, I would be looking at the 1.6 Hyper D, the ripstop by the roll cells that I know a lot of our manufacturers use. I would be looking at something like the 1.7 Mountain fabric, also done by ripstop by the roll, or might be looking at something like the 1.6 Hexon that Dutchware sells with their hammocks. Something along those lines. Most hammocks on the market right now will have a very, at least 350 pound weight rating.
Right.
And a lot of those are conservative anyway. It's just a matter of like a comfort rated for the most part. And now, if you're looking at something where there are some hammocks out there that do have a 200 pound weight rating. Now, that weight rating is not going to say, hey, if you're 205 pounds, you're gonna break out of this. That's not the case. A lot of them are comfort rated. If you're over that weight, you may have a little bit more stretch than is on average optimal for someone of that weight and that satisfaction.
Right.
But for me personally, I love the 1.7 Mountain fabric. That's super favorite for me as far as like that stretch to comfort ratio, and that was the case for me in a single layer, even at 400 pounds. Do you have a particular favorite fabric, Paul?
Just one that will hold me.
I do. I will
No,
say, as
I mean,
far as like the
I
feel of fabrics, I love the feel of the Hyper D.
right,
Probably the best.
right. I mean, you know, because you do the DIY more so than I, you're more in tune with what fabrics are what. Um, I mean, you like what you just did. You just sat there and named off the different fabrics. I mean, me, it's like Corey. I need a hammock. I mean, and so that's me. As long
Yeah.
as it keeps my butt off the ground and don't rip, we're good.
So again, like that, this is a perfect case of, hey, sometimes you can just buy something off the shelf, and yeah, you can be comfortable with it, or you can fiddle down of like, oh, what's the denier of the fabric, what's the weight of the fabric.
Right.
Yeah, you can go down that rabbit hole.
But
I think that's the perfect.
also like I think Corey has a couple of different fabrics that he uses for his hammocks and stuff. And so whenever I was talking to him, it's like he was asking me, he's like, "Well, what type of fabric do you want?" I don't know, just make me a hammock. You know, you decide for me, tell me what I want, basically, type thing. And that's one good thing about the cottage vendors. You can actually talk with them to get information, and they can help get you set up with what you want, and you're not buying mass produced or whatever. Once you get into wanting to spend more money on gear.
Taking that next step into like
Yes.
investing. Is this taking it from like, I might do this one or two times a year, kind of thing, or taking it into, I want to progress as a hobby.
Right. Right.
Well, we've already talked about the warmth and insulation that are offered, especially the ones that are attached under quilts. There are some that you can, most hammocks you buy have separate under quilts that you add. You can buy hammocks that are already insulated. But let's go into like bugs. Like what I remember telling people about HangCon is like, well, you camp in hammocks. Like, what do you do about bugs? We live in Florida. Like bugs will just carry you away. So yeah, there are some people that there's certain times of the year that they can hammock camp without bug netting. I don't have that luxury. I don't think I've ever really done that here in Florida at all. But so Paul, what do you do, and what's your preferred method to stay bug free while you're out camping?
Well, I mean, I have a couple of different styles of hammocks. I got the zippered hammocks that have the built-in bug nets, and then I have the your hammocks that you have a detached bug net that you put around, which is how my Majestics are. I can do either. I think I've gotten to where I like the detached bug nets better, simply because I think I can get a better lay in the hammock, because with it attached, it constrains the way the fabric of the hammock bed actually lays. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Am
I
I explaining that
completely
right?
agree. I think for me, there's definitely a trade off. As far as the comfort and the lay of the hammock, I definitely prefer a detached, like a Franke
Right,
style bug net. Out of simplicity and like the fiddle factor, man, I do like the attached bug net.
right.
Um, I like the bug nets that have a complete zip around zipper, not
Hmm.
just ones that kind of like stop at a particular point in the middle of the hammock. Like my Dream Hammock Sparrow, that's how they do. My Superior Gears, they zip and stop at one particular point in the middle of the hammock. I much prefer a continuous zipper. I think if I was suggesting a hammock with a bug net to someone, I would probably maybe more apt to do um, an attached bug net, only because again, it's one less extra piece of gear that you've got to kind of fiddle with a little bit, but also the lay in the hammock. The only thing that I don't like about the detached bug nets is it it can kind of sag and get in your face as far as like just the extra fabric. It's not as taut and literally integrated into the experience that I think some of the zippered ones that are already integrated in. But I will say a detached bug net, like a Franke style bug net, can make a hammock more comfortable experience just overall.
Right. Yeah, because you don't have that constraint of the bug net.
So I would definitely say for a newbie, an attached bug net with a zipper is really, really great. And I love the bottom entry zippered, whether zippered or cinched. I like the bottom entry ones the best. I will say the detached bug net that just have the single zipper kind of perpendicular to the ridge line that just kind of opens up.
Right.
I hate those with a passion.
I've got a couple of them that are that way, and they are, especially like, when you wake up at, if the weather's a little cool and it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up and you got to pee and you got to try and figure, no, I like the bottom entry, like Franke style.
It's a lot easier to get
better.
in and out.
Yes.
For me, it's just been a more user-friendly experience.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, with the bugs, also comes the question of, hey, what is it? What do you do when it rains? Sleep like a baby, because I've got a tarp over me.
Yep.
And kind of tarps are another really big thing too. You can spend easily, there are tarps that you can spend $500 on that are super specific. Like if you were making a through hike, this is going to be your shelter for the next 3 to 6 months, depending on how long your trail is. You want to pony up in gear that you're going to use, and you're carrying it, so you're really focused on it being light. So you can spend a pretty penny on something like a Dyneema tarp. But gosh, you can spend significantly less on a Sil Poly tarp and be just as protected, if not more protected, than a Dyneema tarp. So tarps, you can go really expensive, or you can go down into less than $100 for some of these Sil Poly hex tarps, or even some of the smaller, like the old diamond tarps from Hennessy. That they will work at a particular level of rain. But I mean, I've ridden out some crazy storms in a simple hex tarp as well. Although I do like my doors on my tarps too. But
yeah, no, I think most of actually, I think I only got maybe one tarp that don't have doors.
Yeah.
I think all my other ones have doors.
Yeah, I definitely prefer, your winter tarp, although I use it, for season, because it has doors. Or I do like a really long rectangle tarp. But even the rectangle tarps, like the ones that we had made for HangCon with our logo on it, you can, move the tie outs one tie out in and create doors with that extra tie out. So, but if you're looking for something light and easy, an entryway into hammock camping, a solid hex tarp, Sil Nylon or Sil Poly can be found easily, around $100, or even you can get some that are significantly less. But again, you're looking for that length. You definitely want at least, as far as someone that's new coming in, you want at least an 11-foot ridgeline with your tarp. If you can get 12, I mean, that's better. Beyond 12 for me, that it kind of gets a little diminished returns because it adds a little bit more fiddle factor. But a newbie coming in, an 11-foot hammock and with a 11-foot ridgeline on your tarp is going to be optimal for somebody that is coming in completely green.
Right. So now, AJ, another question. How does that work? How can I have an 11-foot hammock and an 11-foot tarp and be protected?
Oh, see, that's the thing because you want a ridgeline on that hammock, and most hammocks that are out nowadays, especially if you're getting them from a reputable vendor, will include a ridgeline attached. If not, there's plenty of videos on YouTube of how to make your own and how to kind of figure out what is the structural ridgeline. Well, a ridgeline is basically something that connects the end of your hammock um, above you that offers a structural support that guarantees that no matter how high or how tight you put your suspension, which we'll talk about that here in a second, but you're always going to achieve that particular sag within your hammock that is going to give you the optimal experience, that is going to give you that comfortable lay. And by general rule, you're looking at about 82 to 83% of the overall hammock length. So yes, without that ridge line, your hammock will be, 11 foot as it should. However, with that ridge line, by the time you ridge line, your ends to ends will probably only be about 9 foot. So that gives you about a 1 foot clearance on both ends of your hammock that you can be completely covered under your tarp from the elements, whether it be snow, whether it be rain, whether it be, maybe birds peeing on you in the middle of the night. You'll be set.
Squirrels, birds. Yep.
There's a lot of animals that have defecated on my tarps over the years that I'm so glad that I had them on and it didn't end up on my face. So
and that is why I always use a tarp too. Just like I will always use a bug net. I will always use an underquilt, and I will always use a tarp.
So let's say you've got your gear and you're looking out and you're thinking, all right, I'm going to take this gear and I'm going to go out and I'm going to set it up and I'm going to try hammock camping. So one of the first things that you want to do is finding the right spot. When you're looking for anchor points, you're looking for sturdy trees that are at least 6 inches in diameter, at least. You're looking above you to make sure that you don't see any dead branches because, unfortunately, we've had experience here very recently about people that could have easily gotten seriously hurt by deadfall that have come down and that could have really caused them a bad day. So, yeah. So, having that. So having that awareness of your surroundings, and this would be the case even if you were tent camping,
right?
Looking around, making sure that you don't have those widowmaker limbs that could fall down and hurt or potentially kill you. Not to spaz anybody out, but I mean those are out there.
You just gotta be cautious of them, be wary of it, be leery, not leery. What am I looking for here?
Weary.
Yes, thank you.
Don't be weary.
Yes, that's it.
Words are hard.
They are.
But for me, I always look at something between 13 to 18 feet is kind of optimal for me. I can with my suspension setup. I'm using our all-in whoopies. I can sky's the limits on how far that I can stretch depending on the size of my anchor points. But
right.
I really like that 13 to 18 feet that gives me plenty of room to easily fit. Most of the tarps that I take are 12 feet. So it gives me, kind of that 6 inches on both sides that I can kind of adjust the tarp. And it also gives me some kind of fiddle factor. But I don't want things too far away because I'd have to hang my hammock, the straps really, really high to achieve that 30-degree hang angle for my gathered ends. Or it makes it a little bit easier with a bridge because you're only looking like at a 20-degree hang angle for those. You got a little bit more grace there. But yeah, is there a particular strategy that you do for finding the correct trees?
I found for me, I normally try and find, similar to you, I try to go 14 to 18.
So I think for me, it was like 5 paces from point to point. About 5 paces for me would give me the right, which is about 15 feet.
Right. Yeah, 5 to 6 paces for me is what I do.
So, I mean, we've been doing it for a while. So, I mean, we kind of know what that looks like. But if you're
Right.
new, I would say, like 5 to 7 paces from point to point is kind of the kind of sweet spot that you're looking for. Now, when you're hanging your hammock, for me, especially if I'm doing a gathered end, I like to hang mine. If I find that sweet spot, I'm looking to hang it probably about the height of my forehead or the top of my
Yep.
head. Especially sometimes you may want to hang your foot in a little bit higher. So I'll go to the top of my head and then maybe around my neck level at one end and the top of my head for the other to give me kind of that differential.
Right.
But around that general thing, it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be perfect. And, if you need to adjust something here and there, it's really easily done. If you lay there and like, gosh, something is just not right, or I'm too low, or I'm too high. I mean, it's a quick adjustment that, it would be pretty hard to do that in a tent. You get set up and realize, oh, I've got a lot of flop on this side. This is not really, structurally
Right.
sound. It's like, oh, I've got to adjust this, and you end up taking the tent almost all apart before you can actually adjust anything.
One thing with that also though, because I do the same thing about head level, but you also have to pay attention to the ground. Because if you're kind of on a slight slope, well, 6 foot on this, head level at this tree is going to be different than head level at this tree, and you will have a downward. So you do have to pay attention to that as well. And I mean, if you do have that uneven ground, you just gotta put it up and then step back, and you can eyeball it or get in it and lay, and then you'll be able to tell if you need to bring the one end down a little bit or the other end up or something.
And so, talking about proper hanging techniques, you want to sit at about a 30-degree angle. Now, does this have to be perfect? No. You can kind of play with some things, but a 30-degree angle is going to do a couple different things. A 30-degree hang angle is going to put the least amount of kinetic stress on your strap and hammock system. And it's also going to provide the most optimal level of sag in your hammock as well. And that's something else that I see a lot of places. When we go camping, I don't see as much as a hammock camping as I'd like to see, but you see a lot of these, short lounging hammocks, but a lot of them, man, they are just hung like straight across. And for one, unless that's your thing, our friend Z, she really likes that really flat lay, which is a flat kind of hang angle. But with that, it offers a lot more stress, a weight stress on your suspension components, whether it be your buckles, if you're using buckles, or just the strap material in itself. You're putting
It puts a lot more stress on the end of the hammock too, though.
Yeah, that too.
Your stitches
So
and
you're
stuff like
upping
that.
the opportunity for wear and tear on your gear and introducing a potential failure point.
Usually, also, whenever you string it too tight like that, it puts more shoulder squeeze on you as well.
Yeah. So you want sag in your hammock. You don't want it straight across. You don't want it hung super tight. Also, if you hang it super tight, it's kind of a pain in the butt to undo as well. So
right.
Just something else to think about. But also, we were talking about using that structural ridgeline for that consistency. Not all of your trees are going to be the same. Not all your hammocks things are going to be kind of the same thing every single time. However, adding that ridgeline to your hammock will provide an essential consistency within your lay, because you're going to have that amount of sag every single time.
Makes setting up a lot quicker.
100%. Now, laying in the hammock, this is probably the one thing that we get from new people all the time, is they want to lay in the hammock, almost like a banana, and they're like, oh gosh, this is really hard on my knees. This is not comfortable at all. Like, what is going on? Because I think a lot of people associate kind of those backyard hammocks where you laid right down the middle, kind of those spreader bar-esque hammock death traps
The
that they were
suplex machines.
the suplex machines. And especially in the gathered end, you need to lay it a diagonal. Once you lay in a diagonal, I've seen so many people that I've introduced this to, and it's like a light bulb goes off. It's like, oh my gosh, this is what you're talking about.
Yep.
And, again, there's some fiddle factor with that, with different hammocks things. Like most people think, oh, well, one gathered end is all the same. I used to be that way. No, one gathered end can be two gathered in hammocks can lay completely different.
Yeah, I've got some gathered ends that I gotta lay more of a diagonal end than others. I mean, the Majestics, I don't have to lay at as sharp of an angle in the Majestics as I do several of my other ones.
Yeah. I would say my Dream Hammock Sparrow is the one that I probably have to have the most extreme angle to be the most comfortable. But again, kind of my Dutchware Chameleon is kind of like on par, kind of mid-range. But again, I've laid in Corey's Majestics, and really for that one, any way you lay it is really comfortable. But my Superior gears, that is a super, super minute angle.
Yep. The Clark is the same way.
Yeah.
The Clark is almost a straight lay on it.
And so another thing that I get from people is like, oh, well, what if I'm a side sleeper, and what if I sleep on my stomach? I will add this caveat. In my bed at home, I am a side sleeper, 100%. In a hammock, I can easily adjust to sleeping on my back completely fine. Now, can you sleep on your side in a hammock? 100%. Are some more comfortable than others? 100%.
Yep.
But again, as far as someone coming into hammock camping, I would say, don't be set on with the mindset of how you sleep in the bed is going to be how you're going to be the most comfortable in a hammock, because it will offer a completely different sleeping experience, and you may find yourself completely comfortable sleeping on your back where you don't in a traditional bed.
Yeah, I think for the most part, in my bed, I sleep on my side. In my hammock, I mostly sleep on my back. I think I have turned over on my side, a couple of times in my hammock, but I think for the most part, it's on my back.
Yeah, I mean, I usually pretty much I might roll to my side just to kind of get comfortable for a little bit, but essentially every morning that I wake up, I'm on my back, and guess what? I've pretty much slept through the night. So,
and then some,
and then some. It's lunchtime. So, and like we've talked about, there are some tweaks that you can do to improve the quality of lay. Different hammocks are different, but kind of the quintessential adjustment is raising that foot end just a little bit higher or a little bit lower to suit your preferences and to suit the style of hammock that you are in if you are using a gathered end. Now, if you're using a bridge or a 90-degree hammock, that is kind of a moot point. You have one lay. There's no adjustment there. It is just, it offers the same lay. And you kind of lay everything, your straps, your hang angle are all in a flat plane.
Right.
So
generally, let's explain real quick while you're going over that, because a lot of people will ask, why is it that you want your foot end a little higher than your head end? That's because if you take a gathered end and you have it level or your foot end lower, your torso is obviously heavier than your legs, and it will cause you to slide down to the foot end of the hammock. So if you put your foot end up a little bit higher, you're going to stay more in one spot throughout the whole night and not do all that sliding around.
Yeah, I mean, and I've definitely made that mistake. Even now, where if I'm,
Yeah.
especially if I'm sitting up at night and I'm
Uh-huh.
tired, and I'll setting up, just slightly off. I'm still comfortable, but could I be more comfortable? Yeah,
Yeah.
I do a little bit of
Well,
sliding, and I have to make some adjustments throughout
the
the
next
night.
morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a deal breaker,
I'd done
but
it at HangCon, because I had my hammock set up. And then once Deanna got there, she took that hammock, and I got my second hammock from Corey. And it was late at night. I was setting it up in the dark, and of course, I'm not seeing the ground being slightly, at an angle. And so I done the whole, okay, strap here at head, strap here at head, but it had me, at a slight downward angle. Now, could I have flip flopped, rotated in my hammock? Sure. Rotated my hammock, then I would have been fine. Use the foot ends to head end is foot end type deal. Would have been fine. But the next morning, I just got up and kind of slid the foot end up some and the head end down a little bit on the trees.
So some of the most common mistakes that we see people making, they're hanging their hammock too light or too loose, and that kind of goes back to looking at your structural ridge line and using that as a tool to create the most pleasant experience that you're going to get in the hammock. The second one, and this one rubs me the wrong way, kind of like it does to the trees. Using ropes instead of straps that end up damaging the tree. If you are using a hammock, I don't care where you buy it from. Please use the correct hammock straps. Unless you are using a hammock on your own property, that you do you, boo. However, and with as much as usage as our national parks, as our state parks, and our campgrounds throughout the country, as much as they are getting, especially with this boom in camping experience and camping desire since COVID, let's take care of our trees, guys. We want hammock camping to be an accessible experience for everyone, and we need to make sure that we are being good stewards
Right.
to not only the campgrounds, and to the facilities that we are using on a regular basis.
Right. Just do research, learn what is, proper to use, what is not proper to use. That way, you know this before going in, and don't do something to ruin it for everybody.
Next thing that we have is just not bringing the correct or not enough insulation. As far as like an underquilt goes, I've used a 0 degree underquilt, and it's been all the way up to 50 degrees, and I have not been super uncomfortably hot. You can vent them to kind of give you a range of temperatures there. Top quilt is a little bit more specific in temperatures, but again, you have a lot of that. Hey, you can drape a leg out, or you can vent them as well. So, even if you were to buy one set, that the lowest that you're going to go, you can use those, even to much warmer temperatures. Again, be smart. Don't take a 40-degree set where it's going to get below 20 degrees. Um, you know, that's great that you trust your gear, but let's be realistic in the expectations
Right.
that we are putting our gear through. Also, if you're buying a $60 quilt, which, yeah, they're out there. I own a few of them that we use in the camper, and they're rated for, maybe 45 degrees. But I'm very well aware I didn't pay a lot for that quilt. So that 45 degrees may be a survival rating. I'm not looking to say, hey, I think I could fudge this to about 30 degrees. You're going to be miserable, and
Right.
you're not going to have a good time. But again, trust your gear 100%, but also have realistic expectations of what you're putting your gear into.
When you get new gear, try it out close to home too. Don't go like miles out into the woods to test out that 20-degree quilt in the snow.
So you're not saying about starting into hammock camping and then the next day start a through hike?
Well, no, not wise.
You're not setting yourself up for success in that way. The next thing is poor tarp coverage and leading to wet gear. Again, a simple thing. I don't say that there are any bad experiences with hammock camping for me. Are there experiences that offer a little bit more life lessons than others? Yes. But those bad experiences, don't look at those as deal breakers. Look at those as saying, hey, this went wrong. What could I do next time to make sure that that poor experience that I had does not happen again?
Right.
That's something that I tell my kids all the time. That's something that we really pushed a lot in Scouts is like, hey, if you don't like being cold, then be prepared a little bit better. If you don't like being wet, what could you do that would have prevented you from getting wet and your gear staying dry? you know, yeah, is porch mode great for tarp that you have one side raised up so you can see out? Yeah, oh, it's great. However, in a crazy rainstorm where there's wind blowing in, guess what? That porch is offering just a window for you to get soaked.
Been
Pitch
there,
that
done
tarp
that.
really tight and low, and it will keep you dry significantly more than you ever would. So
Just trying to pay attention to the weather.
be aware. Be aware, people. And this is the case if you were camping even at
Yeah.
a camper. Like you're not going to leave your windows open in your camper in a rainstorm. So
Right.
Be realistic in your expectations of your gear. And probably the last one, and this goes for really any type of camping that you would do, is overpacking or underpacking. I tend, well, I'm not going to say I tend, I always overpack. Um,
You don't say.
I always
I've seen
overpack
your truck
so much.
go on a
I'm trying to get
weekend.
better. I'm really trying
Go
to
on
get
a
better.
weekend hiking. Hey Paul, you want to go camping this weekend? Sure. Opens up the tailgate of his truck and there's like enough gear in there for a small army.
I think the more backpacking I do, the more I force myself into like whittling down, like what will I actually need? But I definitely know some people that are underpackers,
Oh yeah.
and it's a sad day. But again, looking at those experiences and saying, hey, what can I learn from this other than saying, oh, I had a miserable time. I'll never ever do this again. So now let's talk about some of our favorite tips and hacks that we've used to kind of make our experience better. Um, One of the things that I do like that a lot of I like to have a place to put my stuff. I have my glasses. I've got my wallet. I might have my cell phone. I might have a hat or some gloves or just random things that I'll have. I might have a pocket knife that I'm wearing. Obviously I'm not going to sleep with that. However, I need
Right.
to have a place to put it that I know maybe some animal is not going to run off with it, or I'm not going to lose it, which for me, that's a very real fear. So for me, I love using like a gear sling or a ridgeline organizer,
Big
or
shelf
depending
or
on the
something.
type of hammock that you're getting. Like my Ridge Runner has the saddlebags on the side that I can just dump
Mm-hmm.
things into. The sidecar or side sling that the Chameleon has that's kind of sewn in to the zipper. Having those storage options there, kind of the peak bags as well that Superior Gear has. I need a place to kind of put stuff, a storage place in my hammock, and those offer some really great storage solutions. The second thing that I really like having is when I am sleeping, I always like good polyester or wool clothing. I try to get rid of all the cotton that I have. In fact, when I go camping in any capacity, I try to not take anything cotton just
I'm
because
the
it
same.
soaks up the sweat. Yeah, it's soft, but so is wool if it's like really good quality things. I really like having a pair of like cheapo like Crocs or sandals that I can just, if I've got to go, water the trees at 3 a.m., I can just slide into and just go and come back and just kick them right off and kick my feet right back into the hammock. having those shoes easy accessible are kind of big things for me. Not having to worry about getting into my hiking shoes and tying them up. I can just slip and go, and we're good to go.
Yep.
I also really like having a packing solution that makes setup and tear down significant. One of the best products that I tried out last year that has essentially become a go-to for me is the Anaconda. It's great. It really is great. I can just stuff everything into that. That includes my top quilt, my under quilt, my hammock, everything, my suspension, all in one unit. Put it together, throw it in my bag or throw it in the truck, and we're good to go. The only thing outside of that is my tarp. And for that, I have my snake skins that I can just slide through, clip in, and we're good to go. I've got a steak bag for my steaks. So at the end of the day, I have three things that hold my entire hammock setup. I've got a separate bag for my steaks. I've got my snake skins that hold my ridgeline for my tarp, all my guy outlines for my tarp, and then I've got the Anaconda that holds everything else as far as my hammock sleep system goes. Three things that I can just grab and go, and I'm not going to lose behind because I know I have three things.
So that's something I got to get. I keep saying I'm going to get one, and then I forget. And then you mention it again. I'll have two of them before we go over to Denmark. So I got to have one for me. I got to have one for me and one for Deanna.
100%. And another thing is I really like the kind of the benefit of hammock camping is I don't have to bring a chair to camp. I can totally use my hammock as a chair or in some cases a couch for other people to sit in while I'm at camp. I don't have to bring in a separate chair, which sometimes I do anyway, but I have that option to use either my hammock as a chair, or if I'm using a gear sling, I can use the gear sling as a hammock chair as well. And having those multi-use pieces of gear is really a recipe for success as well. So, Paul, hopefully we've kind of encouraged some people that may have been wary about coming into hammock camping and offering some information that maybe encourages some people to just give it a shot. So one thing that I would like to say that you kind of brought out a couple times, test your gear in your backyard before you go. If you don't have a backyard, go to a public park. That's what I did. When I first got into hammock camping, right. I didn't have the trees that were at the house that I was living at the time were non-existent. So I remember going to a public park and setting up my hammock and seeing, what type of lay that I needed to have. Fiddling around with setting up a tarp that offered an easy access. It was completely free, and I got to hang out in nature a little bit as well, too. But test your gear before that you use it to make sure that when you are actually in a camping situation, you can be successful.
Yep.
What are some resources that you would point people that want to learn a little bit more about hammock camping?
Two main ones that I can come up with is, of course, Shug's videos on YouTube and the Ultimate Hang Book from Derek.
Yeah, I remember when I was getting into hammock camping, the Ultimate Hang, the first edition and the second edition were go-tos for me. Even after years of hammock camping, I would go in there and just kind of refresh my mind about certain skills or certain information out there that would benefit me. And Shug's videos are gold as far as information. They are a wealth of knowledge of not just the basics, but hey, he's been doing that forever. He knows what he's talking about, and they're very informative and just spot on with the information.
Right.
I would say,
of course, the Hammocking podcast too. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, I mean there's us too, and I mean I would go in and check out not just us, but go and listen to some of the old episodes of the Hang Your Own Hang podcast
right.
that Chris Duffy did, and then before him, Jonathan and Mark were the host of there. It's not really kind of going on anymore. However, they had, slew of episodes interviewing, people, vendors to talk about different hammocks, as well as, their experiences and things. That's also a really wealth of knowledge. Also, go and check out the podcast done by Ripstop by the Roll. They offer some information as far as like some of the DIY gear and stuff. Also, go check out the podcast from UGQ as well. He is interviewing some really great people, and he's a really cool guy as well. Not as cool as his wife Brittany. We love you, Brittany. But definitely a wealth of information.
Poor Chad.
They are offering.
Poor Chad.
And I would say the biggest thing that I can tell new people. I'm much of a visual learner, and the YouTube has been really great for me. But if you have the opportunity to go to even a small hang, go to a small hang or go to a hang in general. That will be the biggest benefit for you, whether you are new to hammock camping or you're a veteran hanger. You can see things. You can put your hands on things. You have people that are, a wealth of knowledge. They'll be happy to help you out with your hammock journey. And you really can't go wrong with a hang. Even if you don't have to stay throughout the day, just visiting and checking out different setups to see what's out there. And with that, we talked about at the beginning of the episode of some hangs coming up. We had a wonderful turnout for HangCon this year. We already have the dates for HangCon 2026 out. I want to say it's like January 15th through the 19th in 2026. It's going to be that weekend, MLK weekend.
Same. I think those dates are correct.
Same location. We are in the process of evaluating what went well this year, and we've definitely got some tweaks and adjustments to kind of make it new and exciting for 2026. So be on the lookout for that as well. Make sure that you check out Derek's book and Shug's videos, as well as some of those other resources. And you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you like what you've heard from today, or you liked what you've heard from some of our former episodes, we encourage you to like and subscribe to our YouTube, because that really helps get more of our information out in the interwebs. Also, if you like us, throw us a positive review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. And again,
what if they don't like us?
And if they don't like us, just keep your mouth shut. So until next time, hangers, happy hanging, everybody.
As we gently sway out of another Hammock Field episode, we want to thank you, our wonderful listeners, for hanging out with us on the Hammock Hangers podcast. We hope that you have found relaxation, inspiration, and a renewed sense of connection to nature through our discussions. Remember to keep that hammock spirit alive in your daily life, whether it's by taking a few moments to unwind in your own backyard oasis, or by planning your next hammock adventure in the great outdoors. Embracing the tranquility, embracing the simplicity, and never forget the joy that comes from simply hanging around. Before we part ways, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date with all things hammock related. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for the Hammock Hangers Podcast. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to hang with you again on our next episode. Until then, stay relaxed, stay adventurous, and keep on hanging those hammocks high. From all of us here at the Hammock Hangers Podcast, we wish you peaceful hangs and endless relaxation. Thank you for tuning in. Happy hanging, everyone.